defines the Bible as being a holy book.
No, that's a valid point. That's a valid point because I haven't established that the Quran is the word of God. So that's why your point is valid, that you're picking and choosing.
Yeah.
So there's two sides of the coin. First of all, is the Bible reliable? And is the Quran trustworthy? Right. So these are the two sides of the coin. The first question is the Bible reliable? So the Bible consists of, depending which denomination, the Catholics are 73 books, the Protestants 66 books, Ethiopians are 81 books. But essentially, the Old Testament, you have the first 5 books.
Yeah.
They call the 5 books of Moses, yeah? Genesis, Leviticus, Numbers, Exodus, Deuteronomy, yeah? And then you have the 27 books of the New Testament, including the 4 Gospels. I have my reasons why I don't believe the Bible to be reliable.
Okay.
Right, I'll give my reason. So the 5 books of Moses is traditionally attributed to Moses. Moses is the one who authored, who written down. But there are passages within the first 5 books that doesn't suggest that Moses could have authored it. So, for example,
it's difficult for us because we went there.
No, of course. But we can only go by the textual recording.
Yeah.
So, if you read in Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 34, verse 5 to 6, so it's the last book of the 5 books, Deuteronomy.
Okay.
It mentions that Moses died at the age of 120, and he was buried in Moab, and no man knows where he's buried until that day. Okay, if this was authored by Moses, how can Moses have authored that passage? How can he record his own death? How could he say that I died at the age of 120?
The story's in the third person.
Exactly, the story's in the third person. That means somebody must have written after it. There are Orthodox Jews that say, yeah, but Joshua wrote this. But if you're saying that this is just an exception, how do we know the rest of the books were written by Moses? There could be other things that Moses didn't write, yeah?
Okay.
Then you have the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is the oldest, the oldest and earliest manuscript of the Old Testament, which is actually 1,400 years after Moses. So the first name to ever appear of Moses was 1,400 years after Moses.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at the oral tradition of the Jews, there are lots of broken chain of narration. There are gaps, 100 years gap.
Yeah.
And even in the Bible, if you read in the Second Kings, it mentions that the Torah is lost. So we don't have the original revelation from Moses. Yeah. So this is my reason why I can't trust the 5 books of Moses. I have my reasons why I don't trust the 4 Gospels. I don't believe that this was authored by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and I'll give my reason why. So traditionally speaking, Mark's Gospel was authored by John Mark. John Mark was Peter's interpreter. So that means they do acknowledge, the church acknowledges that Mark is not an eyewitness to the time of Jesus, but he's recording based on Peter's testimony. Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, is believed to have been authored by Matthew. Luke by Paul's companion, and John, the Apostle John. The earliest evidence in church history that attributes any gospel to the names Mark and Matthew is Papias of Hierapolis in the year 130. So we have no 1st century reference of the name Mark and Matthew. This is the 2nd century. But Papias describes that Mark's interpreter, Mark is Peter's interpreter, but if Mark is recording Peter's testimony on the life of Jesus, I can give you evidence where it's not possible for Peter to remember. So let me give my reason. If you read in Mark chapter 1, Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. No apostle were present. Jesus met the disciples afterwards. If this was based on Peter's testimony, how could Peter remember the baptism of Jesus? He wasn't there. Which means it cannot be